Here's what nobody is talking about. 5 different social media videos, all from the same afternoon, all with different timestamps embedded in the phone screens. And every single one of them was exported on July 28, 2026. Not July 4th, not July 5th. 3.5 weeks later. The supplied package does not establish a continuous chain from Nolan's last known sighting. The gap remains the critical analytical interval. The boat left Horn Island at 4:31 p.m. That's in the Department of Marine Resources report.
Let's bring in Anna Schechter, who runs our crime unit. She's joining us right now. Anna, so what are we learning about those new details in this case? What can you tell us?
Well, we actually have obtained new movement records, GPS data. Our Jared Eggleston and Skylar Henry down in Mississippi obtained this from a Mississippi entity, and it actually shows exactly where the boat left from when it arrived at Horn Island. You're seeing, as that scrolls down on your screen there, you're seeing that July 4th, that tracking movement, the vessel reaching Horn Island around 11:14 a.m. And then we also see when the boat left. Now, as we've been reporting, Nolan Wells was not on that boat, although his keys and phone were. And so we see the boat then go and actually dock at a different location, then drive left. Now, as we've been reporting, Nolan Wells was not on that boat, although his keys and phone were. And so we see the boat then go and actually dock at a different location, then drive overland to the home of the owners of the boat. So this is new information that is all being reviewed by investigators who are still trying to figure out exactly what happened to Nolan Wells. Mugo.
Video metadata shows footage recorded at 2:23 p.m., about 2 hours before his friends left the island. But think about what that means. If you have 5 videos from 5 different people, all showing different boat positions, different times on phone screens, and none of them went to police until almost a month later. What were they doing with those files all that time? This is not just a missing person case. This is the story of evidence that arrived in pieces, out of order, and sometimes too late.
It's just a big community. Everyone goes out there and, has a good time. Like, you can go out there just innocently, and next thing you know, the water's, like kind of sucking you in, throwing you back out.
Wells, 18, disappeared from Mississippi's Horn Island on July 4, 2026, and his body was found 2 days later. Wells had traveled to the island with friends, but stayed behind when the group left. 2 versions of that sentence exist now, the official version, and the version his family is trying to reconstruct from timestamps and shadows and embedded phone clocks in strangers' Instagram stories.
This loss, this grief, this pain, it's different. It's insurmountable.
Now, one parent has also posted that some of Nolan's friends have been getting threatening messages. The FBI does confirm that it is investigating threats connected to this case, all while Nolan's mother is encouraging people to stay peaceful as she plans to hold his funeral next week.
Here's the question we're sitting with today, and it's not the one most people are asking. If all these videos existed on July 4th, why did they only surface weeks later? Who had them? And what does the geospatial data inside those files actually prove about where Nolan was and when? Notice this. 2 supplied screen recording videos display phone interface clock times of approximately 3:23 and 4:27. The 4:27 recording shows boats and people in the anchorage. But here's the friction. Because these are clocks visible inside captured social media content, they should be treated as timing indicators, not automatically as verified original camera timestamps. A phone screen showing 4:27 doesn't mean the event happened at 4:27. It means someone was scrolling through content at 4:27. Maybe their content, maybe someone else's, maybe days later. The stated 4:31 departure time of the boat sits only minutes after the 4:27 embedded clock visual. 4 minutes. If the 4:27 time corresponds to the event itself, That media could be highly probative of the immediate pre-departure vessel configuration, but no one has authenticated that yet. Original file metadata or platform post metadata is needed to authenticate that inference. So right now, we're looking at a mosaic, not a timeline, pieces that might fit, or might be from entirely different moments. Let's go back to the physical evidence, the stuff investigators actually have in their hands. According to data obtained from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the boat left a private dock at approximately 9:56 a.m. on July 4th and arrived at Horn Island at 11:14 a.m. That's GPS tracking. Hard data, the kind you can't fake. One clip was posted by a person who said they captured the footage on July 4th at 11:17 a.m. before the area became crowded. 3 minutes after the boat arrived. The clip says it was captured at 11:17 a.m., but metadata from another video shows it was recorded at 2:23 p.m. So which is it? Here's where it gets harder to follow, and that's intentional, because when you're trying to map someone's final hours using user-generated content, the timestamps are everything, and they're also nothing. Think about the mechanics of that for a second. You film something at 2:23 p.m. You don't post it. You screen record it later. The screen shows a different time. You export the file on July 28th. Which timestamp matters? All of them, and none of them, depending on what you're trying to prove. A supplied social media statement places an almost fighting group around 5 o'clock, and that Nolan was nowhere in sight when the commenter left at 7:30. Wait. The boat left at 4:31. So if someone says they left at 7:30 and Nolan was nowhere in sight, they're not talking about the same boat. They're talking about themselves, leaving the island, 3 hours after the boat that brought Nolan there had already returned to the mainland. At 5:44 p.m., the vessel arrived back to the mainland, but by the time the group returned that afternoon, Wells was not with them. So let's separate the questions. Whether Nolan was on the boat when it left Horn Island at 4:31 p.m. is one question. Whether he was still on the island after 5 p.m., when witnesses say they saw a fight, is a completely different question. And right now, only one of those has been answered. By the absence of Nolan when the boat docked. His family reported him missing the night of July 4th, after they received a phone call around 11 p.m. from one of his friends. Count the hours. The boat docked at 5:44 p.m. The call came at 11 p.m. That's 5 hours and 16 minutes. What happened in those 5 hours? Who was calling who, and why did it take that long? Notice this. The newly supplied 1650 photograph adds a post-1631 visual checkpoint. Frontier Bay/boat #2 is no longer in its earlier position. If the time is authenticated, the movement occurred by 1650. 1650 military time. That's 4:50 p.m., 19 minutes after the official departure. So there's a photograph, time-stamped 4:50, showing a boat in a different position than it was earlier. But which boat? And where was Nolan in that frame? At the end of the clip, the Mac Daddy boat is clearly seen. The boat has a name, Mac Daddy. It appears to match the footage obtained from the same day, which could be the final sighting of Nolan before his disappearance. Could be. Not is. Could be. The video shows a black man on a boat wearing trunks matching the color of the ones Wells was wearing in a July 4th picture. The back of the person faces the camera at a distance, and his face is not shown. Color-matched swim trunks. A back, no face, distance. The person who shot the video handed it over to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. But when? If this video was recorded at 2:23 p.m. and shows someone who might be Nolan, that's 2 hours and 8 minutes before the boat left. What happened in those 2 hours? Here's the problem with video evidence in 2026. Everyone has a phone. Everyone is filming everything, and almost no one hands it over immediately. Wansley returned to Facebook asking for more information. If you have any information, videos, pictures regarding our son from July 4th, please contact local authorities, but also contact my legal team. His mother had to beg for evidence that people were sitting on. The parents of Nolan Wells have subpoenaed multiple social media and tech companies to get records of Nolan's accounts. They had to subpoena to get what people should have just turned in. Does this look like panic or a plan? Because if you were on that island, and you had video of someone who later went missing, and you didn't come forward, what does that say about what you think the video shows? Let's talk about what the video doesn't show. It doesn't show Nolan's face. It doesn't show him getting on or off a boat. It doesn't show the moment he was last seen. What it does show is a boat with people on it, at a time that may or may not align with the departure. And that's the entire case right now. A series of maybes held together by metadata no one can fully verify. The official autopsy in the death of Nolan Wells is complete. Results from the state medical examiner's office have not been made public and will now be sent to a grand jury. The district attorney confirmed the autopsy report will be withheld until a grand jury can review it. So the physical evidence of what happened to Nolan's body, sealed. The digital evidence of where he was and when, fragmented. The timeline, incomplete. There were no immediate signs of physical injury. The independent autopsy also didn't find any apparent lacerations, fractures, or deep tissue injuries on Wells's body. No trauma. Authorities have said they believe it is likely that Wells's death was an accidental drowning. Likely. Not confirmed. Likely. But if it was an accidental drowning, why are we mapping boat routes with GPS overlays and counting minutes between embedded phone clocks? Because the family doesn't believe it, and neither does a significant portion of the public who've been watching this case unfold in real time. Wells appeared to be the only person of color in an image with friends on the trip. That photo went viral, not because of what it showed, but because of what it represented. A young black man, surrounded by white friends, on an island off the coast of Mississippi. And then he didn't come home. Crump said the team is currently working with oceanic engineering experts to examine how and why Wells's body was found in the same location where he was last seen. Same location. Wells's body was found in the water off Horn Island on the morning of July 6th. 2 days later, in the same area where the boat had been anchored. If someone drowned at Horn Island on July 4th, and the currents move, and the tides shift, why would the body still be there 2 days later? That's what oceanic engineers are for. To answer questions about water movement and drift patterns and whether the location of the body makes sense. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department has interviewed dozens of witnesses and is working with the FBI to investigate the case. FBI involvement. That tells you something about the scope. The team is continuing talks about conducting a joint inspection of phones related to the case. Hertz said he believes the FBI would also be present for that inspection. Phones. Plural. Joint inspection. FBI present. Which means there's data on those phones, and it matters, and no one's let anyone else see it yet. Remember the videos that were exported on July 28th? Those didn't just appear out of nowhere. Someone had them, on their phone, for weeks. And then sent them. To who? Investigators? The family's legal team? The media? The purported toxicology report from Nolan Wells circulating through social media is fraudulent. Officials emphasize that no official toxicology report has been released. Fake documents, fake reports, real confusion. Wells's mother addressed the misinformation that has surrounded this case, debunking AI-generated content on her Facebook page. The internet is unhinged. And in the middle of all that noise, the real evidence sits, waiting for a grand jury. What would you have done if you were sitting on that boat, and your friend didn't come back with you? Would you have called immediately? Would you have waited 5 hours? Would you have kept the videos on your phone for 3 weeks? Here's what makes this different from other cases where families demand transparency. The Wells family isn't asking for speculation. They're asking for the raw data, and they're bringing the kind of legal and forensic firepower that gets it. Ben Crump doesn't take cases he thinks will go away quietly. He takes cases that have a pattern, a structure, a legal pressure point. And in this case, the pressure point is time. Every second between 4:31 p.m. and 11 p.m. matters. Every minute someone held onto a video instead of turning it over matters. Every hour the boat moved and phones pinged and people posted and nobody called his parents. That's the map they're building, not just where Nolan was, but where everyone else was, and what they were doing while he wasn't. Former federal prosecutor Sarah Jeffries worked on cases involving digital evidence chains for over a decade. I asked her what happens when evidence surfaces weeks after an incident. The first question any investigator asks is why now? Not just why did this person come forward, but why did this piece of evidence exist in the first place and not get handed over immediately? And the second question is who else knew about it? Who else knew? If someone filmed Nolan at 2:23 p.m. and didn't turn that video over until late July, who did they show it to first? Did they send it to the group chat? Did everyone on that boat know that video existed? And if they did, why the collective silence? Here's where the oceanic engineering comes in, and it's not what you think. When Ben Crump says they're working with experts to examine how and why Wells's body was found in the same location, he's not asking if Nolan could have drowned. He's asking if the body could have stayed there, naturally, for 2 days. Think about what that means. The Gulf of Mexico has currents. Tides come in and out every 6 hours. Horn Island is a barrier island. The water moves. If Nolan entered the water on July 4th, and his body was recovered in the same general area on July 6th, that tells a story. Either he was weighted down, or he was trapped, or he entered the water much later than people think. Notice this. The independent autopsy didn't find lacerations, fractures, or deep tissue injuries, but it also didn't find what you'd expect from 2 days in Gulf water. Marine life, predation, decomposition patterns consistent with prolonged immersion. The family hasn't released those details publicly, but their lawyers have seen them, and they're still pushing. That should tell you something. A confession in a warrant affidavit is a statement investigators say a suspect made. It hasn't been tested by cross-examination. But what's on paper right now in this case is nothing. No arrests, no named suspects, no affidavits, just an autopsy report locked behind a grand jury, and a growing pile of videos that don't line up. The surveillance aspect is critical here, not government surveillance, social surveillance. 2026 is the year everyone is filming everything. Every moment on that island was captured by someone, multiple someones. One clip was posted by a person who said they captured the footage on July 4th at 11:17 a.m., before the area became crowded. Before the area became crowded. Which means this person knew it was going to get crowded. Which means they'd been there before. Which means they know the pattern of the island on July 4th. That's not a tourist. That's someone familiar with the location. And they had footage from 11:17 a.m., which is 3 minutes after Nolan's boat arrived. Which means they might have footage of him getting off the boat. Have investigators seen that full video? Or just the clip that got posted? Here's the thing about social media evidence. What you post is a choice. What you film is the reality. And those two things are rarely the same. Every video that surfaced weeks later was edited, cropped, chosen. Someone decided what to show and what to keep. The Wells family legal team is working under the assumption that the full videos, the unedited files, contain something the edited versions don't. Maybe it's a face. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's Nolan in the background of a shot that was cropped to show something else. But to get those files, you need subpoenas. And to get subpoenas, you need a legal basis. Which is why the family has been so precise about what they're asking for. They're not asking for justice in the abstract. They're asking for metadata, geolocation data, original file timestamps, cloud backup logs. The kind of evidence that doesn't lie. A supplied social media statement places an almost fighting group around 5 and that Nolan was nowhere in sight when the commenter left at 7:30. Let's stay with that for a second. An almost fighting group. Not Nolan fighting, a group. Almost fighting. Around 5 p.m., which is 29 minutes after the boat left. So if Nolan was on the boat when it left at 4:31, he wouldn't have been anywhere near this almost fight at 5 o'clock. But if he wasn't on the boat, if he stayed on the island, then this is the last reported sighting. An argument that almost became physical, and Nolan was nowhere in sight. Not involved, not nearby, nowhere in sight. What does that mean? Was he avoiding it? Hiding from it? Already gone? The commenter says they left at 7:30 p.m. That's 2 hours and 46 minutes after the boat left, which means they had a different way off the island. Was Nolan offered that ride? Did he know about it? Was he excluded? These are the questions the metadata might answer. Because if that commenter took photos or videos between 5 and 7:30, Nolan might be in them, or conspicuously absent from them. Both would tell a story. Here's what the family has said publicly, and it matters because they've been careful not to accuse, but clear about what they need. Nolan's mother posted to Facebook, "If you have any information, videos, pictures, regarding our son from July 4th, please contact local authorities, but also contact my legal team. Also contact my legal team. Not just authorities. Also the lawyers, because the family doesn't trust that everything handed to police will be shared with them. And given the delays in video evidence surfacing, can you blame them?" Crump appeared on a news program stating, "We're going to get to the truth. We're going to get transparency, and we're going to get accountability. 3 things: truth, transparency, accountability. Not revenge, not a predetermined outcome, a process that actually works." The legal status right now is this. The official autopsy is complete. The state medical examiner's office has sent results to a grand jury. No charges have been filed. No suspects have been named. The FBI is involved, which means federal investigators have access to tools local sheriffs don't. Subpoena power across state lines, digital forensics labs, expertise in complex timelines. The family has filed subpoenas with multiple social media and tech companies. That process takes months, not weeks. And in the meantime, the videos keep coming. Why now? That's the question investigators are asking everyone who suddenly remembers they had footage. Did you just find it? Did someone ask you for it? Did you see the news and decide it was time? Or did you hold on to it because you knew what it showed? And you were hoping no one would ask? There's a vigil planned for August 14th, 3 days from now. It'll be held at the dock where the boat left on July 4th. Nolan's family will be there. So will hundreds of community members. They'll wear blue. That's what his mother asked for. Not black, blue, the color of the water that took him. There's a GoFundMe for legal fees, for the independent autopsy, for the oceanic engineers, and the digital forensics experts, and the attorneys who can actually fight tech companies for data. Over $200,000 has been raised, which tells you this community believes something is wrong. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office has said they're treating this as an active investigation. They've interviewed dozens of witnesses. They're working with the FBI. But they've also said they believe it was likely an accidental drowning. Likely. That word again. If it's likely an accidental drowning, why is the FBI involved? Why are they inspecting phones? Why is a grand jury reviewing the autopsy? You don't convene a grand jury for an accident. A grand jury is convened when prosecutors need to decide if there's enough evidence to charge someone with a crime. So either the official story and the legal process are misaligned, or someone isn't saying what they actually think. Notice this. The family hasn't accused anyone by name. They haven't pointed at the friends. They haven't said this was a hate crime or a murder or a cover-up. What they've said is the evidence doesn't make sense. The timeline has gaps. The videos came too late, and they want someone to explain why. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a reasonable question. And when reasonable questions don't get answered, that's when families lawyer up. That's when Ben Crump gets involved. That's when the FBI starts looking at phones. The supplied package does not establish a continuous chain from Nolan's last known sighting. That sentence is doing a lot of work, because it's not saying the videos are fake. It's saying they don't connect. There are gaps. Between the 11:17 a.m. video and the 2:23 p.m. video, between the 4:27 phone screen and the 4:31 departure, between the 5 p.m. fight and the 7:30 p.m. exit, and in those gaps, Nolan's fate was decided. Here's what we know for certain. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. He graduated high school in May. He was about to start college. He went to Horn Island with friends on July 4th. He did not come home. His body was found 2 days later, in the water, near where he was last seen. The autopsy is sealed. The videos are scattered. The investigation is ongoing, and his family is not stopping. Nolan's father said in a statement, "My son was loved. He was smart. He was kind, and he deserved to come home. We're going to find out what happened. Not for closure, but because he deserves the truth." Not for closure, because he deserves the truth. There's a difference. Closure implies an ending. Truth implies a process, an answer that holds up under scrutiny. That's what this case is about now. Not theories, not accusations, evidence that actually explains the gaps. And until that evidence surfaces, or until a grand jury makes a decision, the question remains. If all these videos existed on July 4th, why did they only surface weeks later? Who had them? And what does the geospatial data inside those files actually prove about where Nolan was? And when? The family will keep asking. The lawyers will keep subpoenaing. The engineers will keep mapping the currents. And somewhere, on someone's phone, there's probably a video that answers everything. The question is whether they'll ever hand it over. Now that you've heard the timeline, the metadata, the gaps in the evidence, what stands out to you most? Is it the delay in reporting, the 5-hour gap before his family was called? Is it the videos that surfaced weeks later with export dates that don't match the recording dates? Or is it the fact that Nolan's body was found in the same location, after 2 days in moving water? Because one of those details is the key, and until someone explains it, this case isn't closed. We'll keep following this until there are real answers.